Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this panel discussion about Beyond Zero, an award-winning documentary that chronicles the journey Interface, a carpet company headquartered in Atlanta, and its leader, Ray Anderson, embarked on to be one of the most sustainable corporations in America and the world. We're delighted to have you with us. My name is Marty Mesner. I am the Associate Dean in the Walker College of Business for Global and Civic Engagement. And today's event is sponsored in part by our Business for Good series and in part from the Energy Summit series that's held through Appalachian State University's Office of Sustainability. We're delighted to have you here on this Earth Day. Hope it is a good day for you. Hope it is a good day for the Earth as we wind down on this COVID year that has helped reduce emissions, but has been a bit of a struggle for us socially. So hopefully we'll keep good habits of responsible stewardship of the Earth's resources as we move back to normalcy. Appalachian State University has a long-standing relationship with Interface, and we have learned from them and we have benefited from what you have seen about the organization in the documentary Beyond Zero in question. We're delighted to have a panel of experts to discuss the documentary with us. We're delighted that Dr. Lee Ball, Appalachian State's Chief Sustainability Officer, will be moderating the panel for us. And without further ado, let me pass it to Professor Ball. Dr. Ball, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mesner, and happy Earth Day, everyone. It's an exciting time to do this work. It's a critically important time. And first of all, the film was just terrific. I've witnessed Interface's success over the years. I've had the opportunity to tour their building in downtown Atlanta, and they are the real deal. What they've accomplished is truly incredible. Interface's journey to climb the mountain of sustainability demonstrates that any business can walk this path and achieve similar goals. The film Beyond Zero also shows what can happen when one person is inspired with a vision for a more sustainable and equitable future. Just a little bit of housekeeping, just so that everyone knows this event is being recorded, I believe, and everyone is muted. If you have questions for the panelists, then please put them in the chat. We're monitoring the chat, and we'll have a chance after a first round of questions where we will ask your questions. So we're really lucky to have such a great panel today. Our panelists include Jim Hartzfeld, Head of Sustainability for North America at Brambles Limited. I think many of you may recognize him. Nathan Havey, the writer and director of Beyond Zero. Diana Propper de Callejon, Managing Director at Cranemere, and our very own Rajat Panwar, Associate Professor in the Management Department of Appalachian State's Walker College of Business. So would each of you just please do me a favor and take a few moments to explain to the audience your connection to this work and kind of how you ended up on our App State panel today. And Jim, I'll let you go first.
Can you hear me now? Outstanding. Thank you, Lee. You saw this pretty face on the screen. I happen to have just joined Interface back in 1994, and a few months into the journey, all of a sudden found myself assigned to answer some really pesky, obnoxious customers in California who were giving the company trouble about the environment. I had my brand new shiny MBA, like you all will have soon, hopefully. So I thought, why waste all this talent and good looks on something as dumb as recycling? But with that question, being a new guy at the company, I wanted to make my mark and do what I was asked to do and show them I was smart and all that. So pretty quickly got a bunch of people together, got the idea back to the chairman and founder of the company. What we didn't know was all of a sudden he kind of went inside and started trying to figure out what this question was about around the environment. And then he came back with a powerful vision, obviously, that you've seen. But I was directly involved in the early years of that, the first 18 years or so of that journey and making it happen. So Nathan and I started talking several years ago about cooking up the human side of this story. So it's been a blast working with him, and really his kind of journalistic filmmaker, storyteller role has really helped kind of bring some of these stories even together to make a more powerful kind of whole message.
I guess you figured out pretty quickly that sustainability wasn't just about solar panels and tiny trash cans.
Well, at first, Ray was an engineer. I was a trained engineer, chemical engineer. So we thought it was a collection of science projects. We figured out we could solve these technical problems. We'd be done, right? Well, that was the first 6 months, and then just the world exploded in terms of what are the issues, what it meant, what was the purpose of our lives as professionals, and the purposes, what was the purpose of a company in an institution called capitalism. So it went from, a few recycling and how do we recycle a square carpet, and and how many solar panels can we afford, to I almost started hyperventilating at the scale of the questions, and that's what then just sucked me into it. Not only did I have a little guilt from spending my earlier part of my career in some of the biggest oil and chemical companies, but I was really drawn more by the potential of the big question, the big scale ideas that a little carpet company had the audacity to throw around, in earnest. We wanted the answers, not just to have fun over a glass of wine.
Nathan?
Sure. So I think first encountered the interface story back in 2010 with Ray Anderson's book Confessions of a Radical Industrialist, and had kind of lionized interface and anybody that was associated with interface. And I had a chance to actually meet one of them. For a Sun and Substance, which is a storytelling event that I used to run in Atlanta in I think 2017. We had Erin Mizan say yes to tell a story, and I was like, it was like meeting Oprah or something for me. And so I got a chance to work with her on the story, and in doing that, I learned so much about what Interface had been up to since that book had been published. Because I didn't know anything that had happened in like the last 8 years or so. And so with Erin kind of blowing my mind about what Interface was working on now, I became obsessed. And then the next year I did the event again, and Jim Hartzfeld made the mistake of saying yes. And so I got a chance to work with him on his story, and got to hear all of this stuff that happened that wasn't in Ray's book about what happened in the early days. And putting two and two together, I thought, this is a film. Like, this is an actual movie. Somebody should make this movie. And then I just kind of fell into the role of being the person that the kind of stars aligned, and got a chance to try to do it. So that's kind of how it came together for me.
We're so glad that you made the movie and pulled this team together, and had a similar experience with Erin, seeing her, oh my gosh, that's Erin, Mizan over there. And, now we're friends, and it's just an incredible opportunity to gather, these people together. Diana?
Yeah, thank you so much for putting this together and for having me. So my journey with Interface started in the mid 1990s. I had graduated from business school, and I had a job offer from McKinsey, and I decided to decline the job offer because I really wanted to work helping businesses solve environmental and social problems and move capital towards solution-oriented companies. And in the early 1990s, starting a business, consulting business, doing that was difficult. Not a lot of business, but enough to support a small firm. And Ray Anderson and Interface were really one of the few role models for a young person coming out with the ideas of changing the world. I have stayed my entire career in building and backing businesses that solve environmental and social problems. I work for Premier, which is a very large holding company that builds businesses to be environmental and social leaders. I was at a conscious capitalism conference for CEOs in the fall of 2019. I saw the 8-minute clip. I said, oh my God, it's my reunion with Ray Anderson in my past that got me going. I went up to Nathan and I just said, what do you need? Any help you need to finish this film, I will do it. And thanks to COVID, I had the time and opportunity to get involved and roll up my sleeves. And it's been just a tremendous, joyous journey. And I'm thrilled to actually meet Jim or meet him because he's, I've been a fan for a long time. So it's a cool moment for me too today.
Well, you saw it here first, everyone. Diana and Jim's, eventual meeting. I think a lot of our students, Diana, are really surprised that your type of work even exists, and they're learning about finance and all these complicated systems, and they have the opportunity to go out and put those skills to work, but also benefit people and places. So thank you so much. Rajat?
Hello, thank you, Lee. Hello, everybody. I really do not have a connection with interface at any level whatsoever, other than the case studies that I did as a graduate student and later as an instructor. So I am on the panel as an academic who has been studying and investigating why and how corporations engage with such laudable goals as interface has put in front of it. Particularly, my recent scholarship is around net zero and carbon neutrality and those kind of things. So I'll be representing basically whatever exists in the scholarly realm in the net zero topic. So yeah,
We're really glad you're here, and your perspective is always very important. The first question we have is for Jim and Diana and whoever else wants to chime in. Interface's technological innovations in pursuit of sustainability have provided the company with a competitive advantage. However, sharing those innovations with competitors will help accelerate carbon footprint reductions across the industry. In keeping with Interface's goal of reversing climate change, Jim, how did the company decide whether to share or not these sustainability supporting innovations in the early years? And then Diana, what do you see other companies doing?
Okay, well, I'll position my response in the story in the era of 1995 and 1996. It is certainly a different era then. And we had, one of the other interesting things is when Ray had this big epiphany and was, staking his, life, his reputation, and some of his finance, his fortune on this. He was also smart enough to know he had no idea what he was talking about, and assembled an external advisory committee around him of some the most outrageous people that I didn't even know people like that existed at the time. But this particularly came up in a dream team, an eco dream team meeting. This idea of Ray almost brought this question to the group. It was something like, well, I understand this is kind of a we are the world kind of, we're all in this and we're all one kind of big happy thing. So I guess I need to figure out what of this I need to be sharing with my competitors. And almost, not completely, but almost to a person, those experts, those visionaries turned around and said, no, Ray, the world wouldn't even know the difference if the entire carpet industry became sustainable. We need winners that win in business because of this, not only the techniques and the tools and the products that you make, but this mindset, which is completely different than the old kind of 20th century mindset. So we need you to kick their behinds because of sustainability. And that will have much more of an impact than you coming up with ideas and just sharing it with someone. So it was kind of a controversial thing. And I'll have to say, meeting with and getting to know some of the big NGOs around, all the big names that you can think of, that was kind of seen as was somewhat evil. How can these people be talking about all this good stuff and then have this selfish, evil kind of view of capitalism and all of that? But that from the very beginning, this idea of this is competitive, innovation-driven business strategy to win in the marketplace. And that's what's going to save, quote, save the world, is commerce getting this, not just an industry getting it by itself.
Yeah, I would add to that, Jim, that if you win, people copy you.
Oh,
And and if you're in as Interface is constantly innovating and moving on to the next big idea and executing on that, you know, the competition's always going to be trying to catch up. I mean, they might copy your latest thing, but you're on to the next thing. So I totally agree that, you know, the more business case we have out there that this works, this, you know, you can boost revenues, you can cut costs, you can get the best talent, retain the best talent, which we have more and more case studies now of other companies who followed in Interface's footsteps. In fact, companies like Unilever and Paul Pullman, who were influenced by Ray to do what they did, that has had a cascading effect. I think the one thing I will say is that there are opportunities for companies to come together to fix big, hairy problems, like, you know, the Consumer Goods Forum coming together, the big consumer goods companies coming together to get rid of HFCs, you know, from refrigeration. Or now you've got, you know, companies that are coming together in different alliances to go and, you know, go out and say net zero and, you know, signaling to the market together that they want clean energy, they want energy efficiency solutions. So there are ways that companies can work together in a powerful way. But, you know, if people copy you, it's the best form of flattery and a great way to.
And I wholeheartedly agree in today's era. We, you know, no single entity can solve some of these big hairy problems. But it's almost why I prefaced that, you know, back at that time. Completely.
You need kind of a combination of both. But
yeah, there's always cooperation.
I'm all for Interface winning and keeping its winning formula and staying out ahead of the competition.
But, you know, I love how Interface and Aaron and their team still, you know, outside of the carpet industry, still they share their story, they share their methodology, they share, you know, the successes, the barriers, and that, you know, that radical transparency has had such a deep impact around the world.
And my last years at Interface, I led their consulting business. You know, I built that and led it, and that was the part to share it. But there was certainly one group of companies that was off the table if I wanted to have a job at Interface and work with Ray was those folks.
I understand. So Jay Gould's sudden departure was no doubt a shock to Interface. It's been a year since that happened. Nathan, what ramifications has that had on Interface's Beyond Zero aspirations?
Definitely, and you know, I'm saying this from what I've heard, right, in panels on the film, and then I continue to study the story because they continue to blow my mind. But you know, where the movie leaves off is this aspiration to have these carbon negative carpet tiles, or carpet tiles that actually sequester more carbon than if they hadn't made them at all. They had produced a prototype in 2017, and as filming wrapped up, they were gearing up for what they hoped could be a global commercial launch of those carpet tiles. And Jay departs, and I'm sort of pleased to report that it didn't miss a beat. There was some internal drama, but they actually do now have carbon negative carpet tiles on sale all around the world. All of the production facilities for Interface all around the world were able to get their production processes in sync to release that globally at the same time. It was delayed a touch by COVID because they were going to roll it out at a huge trade show in April of last year for Earth Day. And well, we all know how that went down. So they delayed it by a few months and finally got the announcement out in the fall. But it's happening. Overall, you can only imagine what the commercial office market is like right now. So there's been some real challenges, but none of that really has been related to Jay Gould's departure as much as the impacts of COVID on the industry, but that has not stopped Interface from continuing to honor its environmental commitments and meet its targets. And so that's part of why it's like, even with all of this going on, they're still holding true to the mission, and it's really inspiring to see.
Well, I can say from my experience, we're trying to get you know, those products on campus, and there's a lot of demand. and we're working on a couple projects where we're trying to get the carbon negative product here. And, you know, we were told, yeah, we have it, but it's going to be a little while longer than you'd hope. So that's a good sign for them.
And we're trying to get it at Chip Canada's headquarters in Toronto.
Yeah, that's great. So Jim, was Interface's sustainability mission an integral part of their hiring processes at all levels in the organization? And if so, did Interface identify the more sustainability oriented applicants, or did you realize that you could, you know, we could train people when we get them?
Well, that's an interesting developmental story, kind of corporate developmental story of its own. Certainly, the American textile industry hasn't been known in history as one of the more, you know, socially, you know, brilliant and progressive industries on the planet, perhaps. And when I arrived, I came, and I'll just share. I mean, I came from time at DuPont, a 200-year-old company that had a completely different approach to human research and resource and potential development. At that time, Interface just hired bodies for jobs. They need a job for a salesperson. Well, they put up a position description and hire somebody for that. So early on, it was not an enlightened HR environment, but almost because of, you know, throwing out all these big questions, challenging everything. It's almost that challenging, growing, learning, audacious to ask the wildest question kind of thing. It also essentially, you know, pulled the HR function along in the wake of that, and pretty soon, and certainly by the late 90s, obviously you've seen him, so Ray's was quite a charismatic figure, but the message and the story about Interface was out already to that point, that it just attracted people with this ethic. And it was like people that had seen a new way and were anxious about that and wanted to participate. They just kind of happened to be the more talented, more creative people in the industry. So it was almost reactively we started attracting people that had these passions, these aspirations. So then the tactic became, okay, how can we sort out the ones that actually have some knowledge or have some skills associated with it? But it was always driven, and I work with our HR people to say, how can we sample for knowledge? What eco-literacy do they have? Do they have any tools that they could take to apply it to their job, whether you're a marketing person, salesperson, an engineer? But more importantly, do they have this kind of systems perspective that then we can teach, how we're doing it to each other, how we're, working it inside our company. So we had that attraction of just some of the best and brightest people. I mean, I sat with a final interview of a guy from Berkeley that personally was the assistant to one of the biggest environmentalists that people would know, a guy named David Brower. And he wanted a job to be a sustainability salesperson on the West Coast. And I finally said, Mikhail, you do know your job is to help sell more carpet. That's it. And he basically said, I had never thought that I would ever work for an actual company, but this is one I'm going to work for, in some job at some point, at some time. And Berkeley grad, top of his class, who would have never considered the carpet industry as a dream job. So that just started happening for engineers, for salespeople, for lawyers that we would hire. It became a powerful source of our talent and our, and then competitive advantage inside the carpet industry.
And I just have two little anecdotes from the filming process to add to that. And so one of them is as you saw, Erin Mizan tells the same story that Jim just told about the way that she herself came to Interface.
That's a great example, yeah.
And it's there's an ethos though that is important to sort of understand here, which is that I think, and Jim, please, your perspective on this too, if it's any different than this, because I probably got this from you, but that Ray always insisted that this is something that we are inviting people into. It's not that we're dictating or mandating. It's the invitation to learn and to study about this kind of stuff, and that we have to continually make the case to sort of win the hearts and minds, because what we want is commitment, not compliance. Right. And so there's an energy about that that's very important to understand about the kind of culture that Interface was able to create, that if you're like, we only want a certain kind of people that already get it, you're sort of losing the opportunity to do that, to continue to make the case and develop and cultivate the culture that will then create these incredible ideas, right? And so just a case in point on this is as we were actually in the factory filming for all the B-roll that we got in LaGrange, Georgia, one of the things that you don't see because we edited it out, but there's on one of the big whiteboards that is up in the public area in the factory, somebody had written "climate change is a hoax." One of the employees in that factory had written that, right? And it was kind of weird. And I asked the person who was our liaison, and I said, oh yeah, there's still some of those folks, but it's like, it's not that they're like a cancer inside of Interface. It's more that that's an opportunity for engaging in the discussion, helping to really meet people where they are, meet them with the science, meet them with the extensive training programs that Interface has developed, all the way from, some of the stuff that Jim had developed to present day. It's still this 3 weeks of mandatory, like, basic ecology training, even if you're a blue collar refractory worker, so that you understand the context of it all, right? And so it's this investment in the sort of the elevation of people's understanding of these issues and educating is more of the cultural focus, I think. And that's, I think, a very important and instructive lesson for any other company that would attempt something like this.
Yeah, that leads to something I wanted to point out that as an outsider, that I've witnessed. Jim, you mentioned being attracted to people that have this, the ability to be comfortable with systems thinking. But from my perspective, what Interface has been able to do is really focus on more of an ecological mindset that really celebrates diversity. And prime example is the factory as a forest idea that emerged, right there, and I guess probably LaGrange.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. But we early on, did a bunch of stuff. Well, first of all, we kind of went too far with the mountaineering kind of metaphors about climbing Mount sustainability and carabiners, and we took that way way too far. But then also the biomimetic analogies that we kept using to teach a different story. In fact, one of our big areas, we had this huge graphic on the wall talking about the metaphor of industry as a forest, and how we really still don't know all the intricate ways that a forest works. So one of our goals was to try to how do we mimic that? And that was way before we even thought about the factory as a forest, literal work that's groundbreaking that's going on now. But that one graphic was so compelling that an early tour of some of the executives from Walmart, they wanted that, and we sent them the graphic, and they put it up in their employee cafeteria in their headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas, as a way of getting people to think differently. Or even as Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart now, he says, sustainability was a new set of glasses that I didn't even know existed. I put it on, and the whole world looks different. So that's that. That perspective. It's not necessarily a tool. I know what a ton of carbon looks like. It's being able to see through different lenses.
Yeah, we're good friends of Janine Vinos as well, and she's been here, and we work with Biomimicry 3.8, and we've been working on a campus as a forest project. And Nathan, if that dream comes true, I know a good idea for another film. Diana, what do you believe are the most challenging barriers to companies, trying to approach beyond zero, reach deep sustainability?
Well, look, I think today, thankfully, there's certainly less barriers because we've got technology costs which have come down dramatically. So the fact that we're in a day and age where GM says we're not going to be putting any more combustion engine cars by 2035. If you would have told anybody that 5 to 10 years ago, I think, people would have, bet $1 million against that. So I think today there is a lot more momentum around consumers demanding, products that are, have a lower carbon footprint. People want to work with companies that are doing something about this. So I just want to, before going into the challenges, paint a picture that thankfully today, if you go and work in a company, it's very different than, thankfully, than what Jim was facing back then. Not necessarily just talking about like the challenges at Interface, but just in terms of the inertia in the whole business world, right?
Inertia. My classmates at my business degree thought I had literally lost my mind too.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly.
What have you done with this degree?
Right. And I didn't go work at McKinsey, so I could start my own consulting firm around helping companies solve environmental problems and make money by doing that. People were like, what are you wasting your MBA for? So I think, probably the biggest challenges today, I can say this because I'm of this generation, it's kind of a generational problem. I'm kind of waiting for like, sort of the millennials they're coming in, then we got Gen Zs coming in because there's a lot of still, lingering inertia around not doing anything. And I think the younger generation has a lot more sense of urgency of doing something about this and feeling like, my generation probably contributed to messing things up. So, and then and I think part of it is not understanding how to translate a vision into practice. Like there's a lot of people that aspire to net zero or just reduction of carbon footprint, but they don't really understand. They think about it not as part of their core business. They'll think about it like a recycling thing, like, maybe, we'll turn the lights off. Or maybe they'll think about LED, light bulbs. But where you really get the biggest business benefit and climate change benefit is when you start thinking about it like Interface, systemically thinking about how do we rethink our product design? How do we rethink our entire manufacturing process? How do we rethink our business model? So you've got companies who are, ditching, instead of using VOC coatings, on their products, they have now discovered, water-based coatings, which actually end up performing better. I was just talking to a company today that does cast marble bathtubs. And, I work with a company called Dirt Environmental Solutions that does modular interior construction. They found that putting denim insulation in their walls outperformed fiberglass, and people didn't have to use respirators anymore in putting the insulation in. So I think the biggest challenge is for people to take the first step, but then when they take the step and they develop the goal, figure out what is actually going to be in lockstep with my business priorities that's going to be ultimately transform your culture and your company's DNA. That delivers the biggest impact both to climate and to your business bottom line.
And that's certainly what happened at Interface. Rajat, I'd like to ask you what your reaction was to the film and what do you think are some of the biggest challenges to achieving sustainability at a deep level?
Yeah, the film is obviously very inspiring, and indeed, as has been echoed by everybody else that I have spoken to about the film, it's very well done. It is well documented, and it chronicles very nicely. And obviously, the business case argument comes out very prominently in it, and that is something that I wanted to share a thought on, especially after the comment that Jim and Deanna made about the importance of business case and moving the competitors. I do agree with it at one level, but what we have seen is, and if I lift the conversation for a moment outside the interface framework. I've talked to executives in numerous industries, and there's always this excellent industry, excellent company in basically most industries. But most executives I have heard saying is this, that yeah, admiration is one thing, imitation is another. That we like that company, but we can't be that. And I mean, of course, they give their own reasons. But what I'm worried is that when I was a PhD student, my professor will come in and they will give me these 3 examples, interface being one of them. Today, fast forward it to 15 years, interface continues to be one of those examples. And actually those 3 other 2 examples have not changed either. So I have not really been able to notice the changes in competitors' behavior, except for when companies came together and they lobbied for a regulation that did rise the tide for everybody else. This is what we saw, for example, in forest products industry, in adhesive segment also, for example, in California. And so this is where my worry is, that the business case is good as long as it can shift the regulation, but otherwise, I think competition and collaboration don't work very well outside the progressive lobbying realm. I don't know if that resonates with your experience or not. Jim or Deanna or
again, for better or worse, having been in this space for since the early 90s, I can say that my experience is that things are in the last 5 years, 7 years, probably have changed more rapidly than the previous 15. So I agree, there's a tremendous amount of inertia, and it does take leadership at the top to get things moving. And then I think what the interface film shows is that once the leader empowers people to go figure it out, like just get it done, then it unleashes this tremendous amount of creative, out of the box, innovative thinking. Those new glasses you can put on to think about your products completely differently. So I think, yes, there's inertia, but now there's more companies that are doing this, that are putting, especially on climate change, the net zero has become de facto table stakes. I mean, again, interface has gone beyond zero, but I don't think there's not one company I know that doesn't know what net zero is and realizes that they're going to have to come up with, something real about that. That's my personal view, at least.
Yeah, I might add a couple things. One, about that same period of time, we're feeling the same kind of inflection point, I think, looking back at those years. And I'd say that other than a few examples, and I'd actually put, as much as we could, hate them at times, I would put the impact that Walmart had on its supply chain and change is still going to be profound, and it's still growing. But there was a shift from it becoming a bigger and bigger issue for companies to manage. That shifted from that to becoming a core part of their competitive innovation and talent strategies. We cannot win without this. So when you shift from defense to offense, well, first of all, zeros start showing up on budgets that you don't get on defense. Using a sports metaphor for companies. But then it just starts, and then it starts attracting the most talented people, even inside companies. So what, obviously Walmart continues to do with their gigaton thing, but looking at this, at some of the things that I think really remarkable stuff that, for instance, Mars is leading in their company, and I just lost the term, the economics of mutuality. I think it's a phenomenal new way of thinking about business. But in the company I work for now, my joke is it took me several years to find a product that's less exciting than a carpet square. And that happens to be a wooden shipping pallet. Well, now it's plastic shipping pallets and all that kind of stuff. But even that company has seen this as it is now a part of our day in, day out value proposition with all of our customers, who, by the way, happen to be 46 of the top 50 fast-moving consumer good companies in the world. So it is a part of the business of doing business rather than, you've got your administrative staff to handle issues. It is, that's the shift. And that's just going to, I believe, continue to accelerate progress. We're racing to winning rather than playing defense, not to just be made to look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of continuing that vein, we had a regulation question in the chat. Thank you, Michael Barnett, who's a professor of management and global business at Rutgers Business School. He asked, and Nathan, you can expand because you've been chatting together, and I guess everyone's probably seeing this, but any clear role for government here? Should Interface and the like be advocating for effective regulation, or do you see this entirely as a commerce-free market solution?
And the quick summary of the answer is yes, there's a role for government. Interface in particular is really active in trying to help government procurement policy to value low carbon options. And the more that there's interest from big government procurement offices in low carbon offers, the more competitors want to compete for those contracts. And so Interface has been effective with the California government over the years, in particular, in driving some of those policy innovations on the procurement front. But the other thing that the other 2 points that are in the chat there, Michael says, yes, and isn't there some additional regulatory stuff here? And yes, we can't, it's sort of like there's a great role here in setting a floor so that we don't let a group of laggards drag the rest of us all over the cliff of climate change. Governments are already intervening in markets, in the energy market in particular, as an example, in huge ways. And so we just want to make sure that we've got the hand of government on the right side of that scale in the climate change fight.
Yeah, and today's, a great example. Add to that just the convening power of governments to bring people together, to get them talking. I haven't had a chance to follow it much, but there's been some pretty serious announcements by multiple countries happening today, and I can't wait to see some of that this evening when I can kick back and catch up on the day's activities.
Yeah, my hope is that China and the U.S. are stepping into the same sandbox potentially with similar goals. We'll see.
Well, if I may, Dan, anything to add there, because you've got more experience than I do by a lot.
And Lee, if I may say one thing here, Mike Barnett, who just asked the question that Nathan was engaged in, Mike, myself, and a bunch of others, we actually just finished a paper in which we essentially criticized the idea of business case. And in fact, we went as far as saying that it has been one of the ways that companies have used to crowd out more meaningful regulatory interventions. And I'll be happy to share that document with everybody when it is out.
Can you make sure that comes our way too, Rajat?
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
I love it. But we have to, as business people, we have to recognize that we have been part of the problem in the past.
Yes.
We are guilty.
Yes.
We deserve the criticism. Okay, so now what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was pretty profound when Mr. Anderson stood before you all and said that people like me may go to jail someday.
Oh, that was his opening comment of being inducted into the Georgia Tech Hall of Fame, which they induct very few people into. That was his opening line in front of 300 of his peers, academics, business people, local Atlanta city officials, and you could literally, in this case, the old metaphor of hearing the pin drop, it was like, what the hell did he just say? Anyway, I'll stop.
Wow. So another question, and Jim, you could probably speak to this. How did you see the kind of the increase in percent share of environmentally conscious buyers and consumers change when you started to make these products available?
Well, several times during this journey, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So this came about, in the early era, just as the green building movement was starting to crystallize with a few leaders. So there became a flurry of enthusiasm and energy in this kind of innovative group. it became kind of the cool thing to be a part of in the, most of the commercial building industry. So we pretty quickly, found our peeps. We found, we found our crowd, and it was a self-reinforcing, positive reinforcing loop, because the more we, brought them examples of what they wanted, that it even emboldened them to try to go even further and push other suppliers and even other, architects and interior designers. So there was definitely a symbiosis there. So it grew, there's no doubt that growth of the green building movement, helped us commercially. For example, at one time, and it wasn't, really well auditable or anything, but we estimated at one time we were getting 75% market share of all LEED green buildings across the US. Do you think the CFO had some interest in that?
Yeah.
Do you think the salespeople that were paid by commission had interest in that? What do you think they were going to be selling? Our greatest product. So when you get all those factors aligned, it's classic alignment kind of idea. When you get all that aligned, you just, unexpected cool stuff starts happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know if I even answered your question.
No, you did. And, I'm fascinated in diffusion of innovation, that model and that Rogers, came up with years ago and 60s. And, you were able to see that, go over the, go beyond the laggards, and specifically with like LEED interiors. That's incredible. So,
but even today, just to bring it, back from 20 years ago, that today, even one of my strategies in the company I work with now is to find those, and these are big companies, but to find their priorities, find their interests, and if nothing else, introduce people within their own company, on the procurement side, to make decisions about, important decisions like which shipping pallet to use.
right,
Sarcasm. But connect that inside, and then all of a sudden they start having more interest in the environmental, qualifications of a product, and the next contract cycle, all of a sudden you start seeing criteria put in there, and then there's when the momentum really builds.
So another friend of ours, Jay Lanier, Ray Anderson's grandson, who lives over here in Asheville. We've talked a lot about embodied carbon, and he's involved with with that nationally, and he tells us, just ask your manufacturers what the embodied carbon profile of their products are. That's all you have to do. And that's kind of that's how Ray started. And so we started doing that, and not just with carpet, but because we know we have a really good options with carpet, but all kinds of other products, concrete and many others. So we have time for one more question, Nathan, and really anyone who else wants to chime in here. What was something that really surprised you during this project and the creation of the film?
The thing that's been amazing has been, since the film was completed and since word has gotten out about it, the number of people who have a Ray story. I'm a magnet for them now, and the extent to which people just have these incredible memories of just what a dynamic and incredible person he was. But I think that no doubt Ray Anderson is special, right? But the other thing about this whole process, and it's actually Jim's opening comment in our trailer, is that it wasn't just Ray. Right, that it was because of the getting the culture right at Interface that was not just Ray's doing. Is Ray evolved as in his own leadership, right? So it's like you can have this man with a vision kind of a trope about what is required to do this, but that totally hides the actual beauty of what the Interface story can teach us. And so I think that is something that for so many people with a Ray story, they don't know it either. They don't really get how the whole change occurred. And I think that one of the things that got me the buy-in from Interface to be able to do the film was, thanks to Jim, my sensitization to there's a whole different story here. And we tried to do justice to that story, but I think that for anybody that's a fan of the Interface story, if we're telling it as, oh, Ray Anderson got inspired and then did this thing, no. That's not how this goes down. And nor is it how it must go down in the other companies that have got to make this change in the decade. And so surprise for me, and hopefully a surprise to a number of folks who are hearing the story. But then it is the big reveal of kind of the key to going beyond zero for any company that seeks to emulate interface.
Yeah, the big chill bump moment for me in the film was when Ray rushed up to give John Denver that huge hug. And, you know, Jim, you were in the room, and that moment in Hawaii, that event, that, you know, that was a pivotal event, and I feel like human history in a lot of ways. I mean, it really was. And I know I said with the last question, but, you know, Jim, what did it feel like at that moment?
Well, there was, you know, John's buddy that knocked on our door for the 6 a.m. production meeting and said, "Oh, by the way, John's been up all night finishing a song that he's worked on for 9 months. Do you think you could find some time in your agenda for him to share it with you?" Well, that was a pretty quick decision point. But what had happened the night before was the authentic native Hawaiian sovereignty movement showed up in the evening before and said, "We will not allow your Disney-esque normal, you know, resort plastic skirt, you know, Hawaiian cartoon ceremony. We will not allow that to happen to send you back to your homes. We will bring the real thing." They came, drums, I mean, the whole thing. So you got John Denver, you know, classic, you know, Western white kind of view. And then the people of Hawaii coming. Oh, it was, it was pretty cool.
Wow, thanks.
It was pretty cool.
Another chill bump moment. Jim, thank you for sharing that. Well, I just thank all of you for your time. This has been amazing. I do have to ask, Jim Westerman, are you in the house?
Yes, I'm here.
Take it away, Jim.
A quick thank you to Dr. Ball for providing me a bit of time to recognize the substantial sustainability accomplishments of one of our App State faculty members on this Earth Day. Each year, the Walker College of Business and Holzhauser Ethics honors a faculty member with the Green E Award for their outstanding accomplishments in sustainable business. The honor comes with a nice trophy, and this year it comes with a monetary award. Thank you, Dean Vinoy and Associate Dean Mesner, for that. Past faculty honorees have included John Whitehead, Joseph Kazier, Todd Cherry, Heather Dixon Fowler, Tammy Kowalczyk, Lee Dunstan. And it's my distinct pleasure to announce the recipient of this year's Greenie Award. A few of his noteworthy accomplishments include: he served as the lead editor of 4 sustainability-focused special issues on post-pandemic value chains, advancing the circular economy, deforestation, any hints here? And also managing transparency. His research has been mentioned in Forbes, The Guardian, Green Biz, and NPR. He was instrumental in bringing to campus internationally recognized activist Kailash Satyarthi. Sorry if I didn't get the name quite exactly right. A Nobel Peace Prize recipient focused on child labor issues to our campus, and also the president of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Jeff Sachs. This year's Greenie Award, in recognition of outstanding accomplishments in sustainable business at the Walker College of Business, goes to Dr. Rajat Panwar. Congratulations, my friend Rajat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks a lot. It means a lot to me. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Jim. And congratulations, Dr. Panwar, for this well-deserved award. Now we know what is possible and what is necessary. We all have the ability and the responsibility to help change the world. I want to thank our panelists and everyone attending today. This Beyond Zero event was held in partnership with Appalachian State's Office of Sustainability and the Walker College of Business and its Sustainable Development Solutions Network. This has been an Appalachian Energy Summit and Business for Good event. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and happy Earth Day.